Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. Yesterday I published a video discussing how DisplayPort 2.1 works with the new Gigabyte Aorus FO32 U2P gaming monitor, the first 32-inch 4K 240Hz QD OLED display to use DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20, allowing for the full resolution and refresh rate without needing display stream compression or DSC. As part of that video, I discussed the increased cable requirements for DisplayPort 2.1 and showed how using a low-quality cable only capable of low bandwidth likely wouldn't work with new UHBR20 displays, where they still do work with DisplayPort 1.4 devices. But there was some information I overlooked in that video that's worth discussing more in detail in a follow-up video, and that's cable length. I brought up the fact that Gigabyte only provides a 1 meter mini DisplayPort to DisplayPort UHBR20 certified cable with the FO32 U2P, which for many buyers won't be sufficient because it's too short. And, well, it's only a mini DP to DP cable. And I mentioned that people wanting to purchase this monitor will likely have to buy a longer cable, and that these DP 2.1 cables are typically more expensive than DP 1.4 cables. The issue that I failed to mention is that this 1 meter cable is pretty much as long as it gets for DisplayPort 2.1 cables officially certified to work with the 80 gigabits per second bandwidth requirements of UHBR20. So DisplayPort 2.1, as it currently stands, has a cable problem. You see, pushing 80 gigabits per second through a passive copper cable isn't a trivial issue. The longer the cable is, the more signal degradation you can expect over the length of the cable, and copper cables, they aren't the best for preserving signal quality at this level of bandwidth over long lengths relative to, say, fiber optic. Certifying a cable that you know will work over a 2 meter length is much harder when the requirements are 80 gigabits per second instead of 32 gigabits per second like previous DP 1.4 cables. It's a huge jump in bandwidth, making it harder to certify cables over a certain length. For DisplayPort 2.1, VESA are certifying multiple different types of cable under that banner, including DP40 cables at 40 gigabits per second for UHBR10 link speeds, DP54 cables for 54 gigabits per second and UHBR 13.5, and the highest level of certification, DP80 cables at 80 gigabits per second for UHBR20. Why there are multiple acronyms here, I'm not sure, but these are the labels VESA are using. Anyway, for 4K 240Hz products like the FO32 U2P, where we are concerned about an uncompressed signal over DP 2.1 UHBR20, we need to focus on that highest certification, DP80. If you look at VESA's list of officially certified DP80 cables, the maximum length you'll find is just 1.2 meters from either Club 3D or Glorymark, just 20 centimeters longer than the cable Gigabyte provides in the box. Whether we're talking 1.0 or 1.2 meters long, neither is going to be sufficient for many setups unless your PC and graphics card happen to be in very close proximity, like if your system is on the desk and it's right next to the monitor. Most monitor manufacturers know that such a cable length is insufficient and provide 1.5 or even 2 meter cables in the box. For example, this is the HDMI 2.1 cable that Gigabyte provide in the FO32 U2P box. It's 1.5 meters long, and this that I've got here is the DisplayPort 1.4 cable that you get with ASUS ROG products like the PG32 UCDM. This is it's 1.8 meters in length, so very usable. But if Gigabyte wanted to provide you a 1.8 meter cable that's DisplayPort 2.1 DP80 certified, they can't because they don't exist, and you can't buy one either. And that's a problem for people wanting to actually make use of DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20 that want to use it with a cable that's longer than this long. This is another reason why you might find that DP 1.4 with DSC is a better solution than DP 2.1 using UHBR20. If your setup is such that you require a display cable more than 1.2 meters long, you'll only get that sort of cable supporting bandwidths that would use DSC anyway. And if you need to switch the FO32 U2P into its DisplayPort 1.4 mode or use HDMI 2.1 instead because there isn't a sufficient cable, you might as well have not purchased this monitor specifically for its DP 2.1 capabilities if that's indeed what you did. Of course, it's possible that in the future, by the time UHBR20 graphics cards are more widely available, There will be DP80 cables available longer than 1.2 meters. As a reminder, no current consumer graphics cards from either AMD or Nvidia support the UHBR20 spec. However, it's likely for longer lengths, 2 meters, 3 meters, 5 meters and more, we will be looking at expensive active fiber cables rather than simpler passive designs like we see with the majority of typical DisplayPort cables. Vaser expects that 2 meter DP80 cables will need to be active and are working on a DP80 active specification for the end of 2024. Even today, buying the Club 3D 1.2 meter DisplayPort 2.1 DP80 certified cable will set you back $24 US. That's more expensive than Club 3D's 3 meter DP 1.4 cable and twice the price of a DP 1.4 cable of a similar length. Ugreen, who have been a Hardware Unboxed sponsor in the past, though aren't sponsoring this video, offer a 2 meter properly Vaser certified DP 1.4 cable for just $10 US. I can't see an active DP80 cable at only 2 meters long costing just $10, but I'd love to be proven wrong on that. It's not just the DP80 cable specification that struggles for length. The current longest certified DP40 cable required for UHBR10 link speeds is just 3 meters long. DP54 cables, which aren't available yet, are expected to max out at 2 meters long to begin with. Meanwhile, with DP 1.4 cables, you'll find certified options at least 5 meters long. And this brings me to another point. Because the DisplayPort 2.1 specification includes so many different allowed configurations, it's easy to be misled by cable advertising. If you've bought an FO32 U2P and are searching for a longer DP 2.1 cable that supports 80 gigabits per second of bandwidth, you can find products that are advertised as Vaser certified, DisplayPort 2.1 and 80 gigabits per second that actually aren't that at all, but is technically allowed despite being highly misleading. For example, this is a 2 meter Silkland brand cable that I bought off Amazon. It was the first listing on Amazon here in Australia, and I wanted to test if it worked with the FO32 U2P. Is this actually a DP 2.1 compatible cable? Of course, I couldn't do that because the AMD Radeon Pro W7800 only supports DP 2.1 over mini DisplayPort, and this is a full-size cable. But anyway, it says right here in the title, DisplayPort 2.1 cable, Vaser certified, 80 gigabits per second, 16K 60 Hz, and so on. 2 meter versions available. Oh look, you can even get a 6 meter version, but this is misleading. If you look at the Vaser website, Silkland are a company that makes certified cables. In fact, right here is their 2 meter DP 2.1 cable that advertises 16K support, officially certified. But if you filter by DP40 and DP80 certified cables, good enough for certified 40 and 80 gigabits per second speeds respectively, you'll see Silkland produces 0 cables certified for those speeds. So it is a certified DisplayPort cable, but it's not a certified 80 gigabits per second DisplayPort cable. The way it's advertised is very sneaky. It implies the certification covers all the listed specifications, including 80 gigabits per second, but actually the certification is for a lower level of link speeds. It might work at 80 gigabits per second, though I doubt it, but it certainly hasn't been certified to work by Vaser at 80 gigabits per second. And this mess is created because DisplayPort 2.1 as a brand includes many different possibilities. DP80 UHBR20 is a possibility, but so is the old HBR3 link speed offered through DisplayPort 1.4. As mentioned by TFT Central in their detailed DisplayPort 2.1 guide way back in October of 2022, UHBR speeds are actually optional as part of the DP 2.1 spec. Provided a manufacturer supports other elements of DisplayPort 2.1 as required, like say DSC and Adaptive Sync, they don't have to support UHBR link speeds. And that's why cables can claim DisplayPort 2.1 compatibility while only being certified for DP 1.4 class speeds, because DisplayPort 2.1 includes configurations where the bandwidth might only be 32 gigabits per second, not the full 80 gigabits per second. And that's without even discussing the mess of 3 separate UHBR configurations, all of which are DisplayPort 2.1. So Vaser can basically go, yep, your DisplayPort 2.1 cable is certified because it's good for HBR3 32 gigabits per second speeds. You can't say it's a certified DP40 cable or DP80 cable because we haven't certified it for DP40 or DP80 speeds, but you can still say it's VESA certified, and you can say it's DisplayPort 2.1. That's misleading, and I don't like it at all. This creates all sorts of headaches for cable buyers. Let's examine the top 5 results on Amazon when you search for DisplayPort 2.1 cable. The first result is a U-Green cable, which is VESA certified, but is only certified for DP40 according to the VESA website, not DP80, despite advertising 80 gigabits per second. Ivanki, aka Shenzhen Velocity Technology Innovations, does a better job, claiming DisplayPort 2.1 VESA certification at 40 gigabits per second, and we can see these cables are DP40 certified in VESA's database. Then we have the Silkland cable I bought and already discussed, which isn't even DP40 certified but advertises 80 gigabits per second. The fourth option from Highwings isn't VESA certified at all, but advertises 80 gigabits per second on cables up to 4.5 meters long, which is highly dubious. And then in 5th place we get to Cable Matters, a brand that does produce official DP80 cables, though in this instance it's an officially VESA certified DP40 cable and is advertised as such. So of the top 5 options at one of the largest retailers, only 2 of them accurately describe the capabilities of the cable as certified by VESA. Several other brands outside the top 5 advertise 80 gigabits per second cables that are longer than any officially certified DP80 cables. This is a huge mess, though as we've seen from HDMI and USB specifications over the years, it isn't exactly surprising. For some reason, these companies are content with making the spec and branding as confusing as possible so that everyday consumers can be easily misled into purchasing substandard products. I could think of half a dozen better ways to label and brand DisplayPort products than what was ultimately settled on for DisplayPort 2.1. So what needs to be done from here? Well, as a consumer, if you are thinking of buying a DisplayPort 2.1 cable specifically to access higher bandwidth, it's essential to check the VESA DisplayPort website and make sure it's both certified and certified at the link speed you are targeting. If you want a DP80 cable, in particular for DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20 monitors, make sure it's listed in the DP80 section on VESA's website. The cables themselves obviously need to get longer, especially at the UHBR20/DP80 tier. 1.2 meter cables, or 1.0 meters as provided by Gigabyte, are practically useless in a lot of setups. To actually see the benefits of UHBR20 in a wide variety of setups, 1.5 and 2 meter long cables must be available minimum, and ideally they should be affordable. Hopefully, once DP80 active cables are released, they aren't ludicrously expensive, but at least VESA are aware of the cable length limitations and are working towards viable solutions. Until that happens, be aware that DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20 monitors do have limitations around cable length and quality, and that if you truly want to utilize this functionality, it may not be as easy as you first thought. Like I said in the first video, it's something you should be aware of when making a buying decision. How important is DisplayPort 2.1 really? Am I actually going to be able to utilize this feature? How easy will it be to utilize? And what's the cable situation? Right now, DisplayPort 1.4 with DSC is simply the more accessible technology, and in many circumstances it works just fine. Though we are still in the early days of DisplayPort 2.1 and there's still plenty of time for improvement, so hopefully they'll make them. Anyway, that's it for this follow-up video to yesterday's video. Again, still working on the Gigabyte Aorus FO32 U2P video. But once I did some more research into these cables, cable lengths, availability of cables, all the advertising and those sorts of things, I'm like, yeah, probably should have included that in the first video. So a follow-up video was, of course, necessary. Anyway, if you like the sort of work that we do here at Hardware Unboxed, of course, please subscribe and like our channel here, Monitors Unboxed. And if you want to support the channel directly, we have our Patreon and Float Plan accounts. Links to those are in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.